Ethan Caldwell stood in his lavish office, the city skyline sprawling out before him like a glittering tapestry woven with dreams and ambition. The sun dipped low, casting a golden hue over the glass towers that pierced the horizon, but he felt none of the warmth. Instead, a chill settled deep within him, a reminder of the burdens he carried. His eyes, sharp and penetrating, were drawn to the horizon, yet his mind wandered far away, back to a childhood filled with struggle and heartache. The office was a testament to his success: sleek furniture, polished wood, and artwork that spoke of sophistication and wealth. Yet, the opulence felt hollow. Ethan turned his back on the view, pacing the room as memories flooded his mind. He remembered nights spent in a cramped apartment, where the walls whispered secrets of poverty and despair. His mother had sacrificed everything for him, working multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. The image of her worn hands, callous from labor, haunted him. "Ethan," he muttered to himself, frustration lacing his tone. "You can't keep running from the past." He clenched his fists, the weight of a secret pressing heavily on his heart. The empire he had built from the ground up had come at a cost, one he wasn't ready to face. It was easier to hide behind the walls of his success, to convince the world, and himself, that he was invincible. Yet, he knew that deep down, he was just a man grappling with ghosts. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah Mitchell was preparing for another day at the Caldwell mansion. Her small apartment was a stark contrast to the grandeur of Ethan's world. The walls were painted a faded beige, the furniture mismatched and worn, but it was home, her sanctuary amidst the chaos of life. She carefully arranged her modest belongings, the soft morning light filtering through the window and illuminating her rounded belly. She was pregnant, a fact that filled her with both joy and anxiety. As she tied her hair back, Sarah caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The reflection of a woman burdened by dreams, yet to be realized, stared back at her. "What will I do, baby?" she whispered, placing a hand on her belly. "I want so much more for you than what I had." In her heart, she yearned for a better life, not just for herself but for the child growing inside her. Every day, she sacrificed little pieces of herself in the hopes of providing a brighter future. Her job as a housekeeper at the Caldwell mansion was demanding, but it was a steady income, and for now, it was enough. Just a few more months, she reassured herself, taking a deep breath. "You'll make it, Sarah. You always do." With determination in her heart, she slipped on her shoes and grabbed her worn-out bag, stepping out into the world with purpose. At the Caldwell mansion, the atmosphere was both familiar and intimidating. The grand entrance welcomed her with its elaborate chandeliers and polished marble floors. As she walked down the long corridor, the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the faint aroma of flowers from the garden outside. Ethan was already in the kitchen, his tall frame hunched over the counter, lost in thought. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," Sarah greeted him, her voice soft yet assertive. She approached him with a warm smile, instinctively noticing the tension in his posture. He looked up, his piercing blue eyes meeting hers for a brief moment. "Morning, Sarah." There was a hint of warmth in his voice, but it was overshadowed by an underlying heaviness. He straightened up, brushing a hand through his tousled hair, attempting to appear more composed than he felt. As Sarah poured him a cup of coffee, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. "You seem distracted today." "Long night?" she inquired, handing him the steaming mug. Ethan took a sip, the bitter taste grounding him momentarily. "You could say that," he replied, his voice low. "Just thinking about things." He studied her for a moment, a flicker of something, concern, perhaps, crossed his features. "How are you feeling? Everything all right?" The question caught her off guard. It was rare for him to show such genuine interest in her well-being. "I'm fine, thank you. Just the usual, work, and preparing for the baby," she responded, a hint of pride in her tone. "Good to hear," he said, his expression softening slightly. "You're doing an incredible job, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you." The compliment surprised her, warmth spreading through her chest. "Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. It's my pleasure to help." "Your home is beautiful," she replied, her eyes briefly scanning the opulent kitchen adorned with gleaming appliances and polished countertops. Ethan chuckled lightly, the sound almost foreign to his own ears. It's just a house, really. A house filled with memories. Sometimes, I wonder if it's all worth it. His words hung in the air like a forgotten melody, resonating with Sarah in a way she couldn't explain. There was a vulnerability in his voice, a hint of something deeper that stirred her curiosity. I think a house becomes a home when it's filled with love and laughter, she offered gently, hoping to lift the weight that seemed to cling to him. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. You think so? I do, she affirmed, her voice steady. No matter how grand a place might be, it's the people in it that matter most. I've learned that through experience. Ethan regarded her with a newfound interest, the flicker of a connection sparking between them. You have a point, he mused, taking another sip of coffee. I've focused so much on building this empire that I've lost sight of what truly matters. Their eyes locked for a moment, and Sarah felt an unspoken, understanding pass between them. It was a rare glimpse into the man behind the successful facade, a reminder that even those who seem invulnerable carry their own burdens. Suddenly, the moment was interrupted by the chime of a phone vibrating on the countertop. Ethan's expression shifted, a shadow crossing his face as he glanced at the screen. Duty calls, he muttered, reluctantly breaking the connection they had just forged. Of course, Sarah replied, sensing the shift in the air. I'll finish up here. As he stepped away, she couldn't help but wonder about the secret he was hiding, the one that weighed so heavily on his heart. It was clear to her that beneath the polished exterior lay a man yearning for connection, struggling with his own demons. Ethan walked away, his mind racing with thoughts that blurred together. The exchange with Sarah had stirred something within him, a longing for authenticity in a world that often felt false. He shook his head, trying to dispel the fleeting warmth she had ignited. He didn't have room in his life for distractions. Not now. Yet, as he settled back into the chaos of his day, he couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason, that perhaps Sarah held pieces of the puzzle he had been trying to solve for so long. Little did they both know that this simple morning ritual would set in motion a chain of events that would intertwine their fates in ways they could never have imagined. Ethan Caldwell stood at the edge of his expansive garden, the carefully manicured hedges and vibrant flower beds a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within him. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the landscape as he took a deep breath, trying to gather his thoughts. Today was different. Today, he felt an urge to share his burden, to unearth the secrets that had been locked away in the recesses of his heart for far too long. Sarah, he called, his voice breaking the tranquil silence that enveloped the garden. She appeared almost instantly, her hands brushing the dirt off her apron as she stepped out from the house, her eyes bright with curiosity. Yes, Mr. Caldwell, she replied, her tone respectful yet warm, a familiar cadence that had developed between them over the years. Would you like to join me for a walk? He asked, his invitation surprising even himself. He had never been one to mix business with personal matters, but something about Sarah's gentle demeanor made him feel safe, as though the weight of his past could be shared without judgment. Of course, Sarah said, her smile lighting up her face. She followed him into the garden, her footsteps soft against the gravel path. As they strolled beneath the blooming cherry blossom trees, a comfortable silence enveloped them. Ethan could feel the tension in his chest begin to ease, the lush greenery around them providing a sense of solace. Beautiful, isn't it? Ethan gestured to the blossoms swaying gently in the breeze. I often forget how peaceful it can be out here. Life gets so busy, and I lose sight of what truly matters. Sarah nodded, her gaze drifting towards the vibrant colors that surrounded them. It really is lovely, Mr. Caldwell. It's nice to step away from the workload sometimes. Nature has a way of reminding us to breathe. He glanced sideways at her, surprised at her insight. In the years of her service, he had come to appreciate her wisdom, though he had never expected her to be so perceptive about life. You have a way of seeing things differently, Sarah. I admire that. She shrugged, her humility evident. I suppose when you've faced your share of struggles, you start to see the world through a different lens. That statement hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Ethan's heart raced as he considered the secrets he had kept bottled inside. I've had my struggles too, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "There was a time when I didn't think I would ever make it out of the darkness." Sarah turned to him, her eyes wide with interest. "What do you mean?" "If you don't mind sharing, of course." Ethan hesitated, the memories flooding back. Memories of loss, betrayal, and the price of ambition. "My father passed away when I was young, and it left a gaping hole in my life. He was my anchor, and losing him turned my world upside down. I had to grow up fast, take on responsibilities that no child should bear. It was hard." "I'm so sorry, Mr. Caldwell," she said softly, her empathy palpable. "That must have been incredibly difficult for you." He nodded, the weight of her understanding bringing him a sense of relief. "It was. And then as I built my business, I lost friends along the way, some to betrayal, others to jealousy. It's a lonely path at times." "I understand that more than you know," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "I've had to make sacrifices, too. My father is in prison for a crime he didn't commit. It's been a struggle to keep my family afloat while trying to prove his innocence." Ethan stopped walking, stunned by her revelation. He had known of her father's situation, but had never grasped the full extent of the burden she carried. "Sarah, I had no idea. That must be incredibly hard for you." "It is," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm determined to fight for him. I have to believe that the truth will come out eventually." A silence fell between them, charged with understanding. Ethan felt a connection with Sarah that he had not anticipated, as if they were two lost souls navigating a treacherous sea of hardship. It was a rare moment of vulnerability, one that made him feel more alive than he had in years. "Sometimes I think about how different my life could have been if I hadn't faced those challenges," Ethan mused. "But then I wonder if they shaped who I am today." "Do you feel the same way?" "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her gaze thoughtful. "Every struggle teaches us something. I've learned resilience, and I hope to pass that on to my child. I want them to know that even when life gets tough, there is always a way forward." Ethan's heart swelled at her words. He admired her strength, her unwavering spirit in the face of adversity. Just as he was about to deepen the conversation, his phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting the moment. Reluctantly, he pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a call from his business partner, and he felt a wave of frustration wash over him. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping away slightly. "I need to take this." As he answered the call, his mind drifted back to Sarah. He could hear her gentle breathing behind him, a reminder of the connection they had forged just moments ago. The conversation with his partner was short but urgent, a discussion about a crisis that demanded his immediate attention. Ethan felt torn, caught between the demands of his business and the profound moment he had just shared with Sarah. "Ethan, we need to address this issue now," his partner insisted, his voice clipped with impatience. "The investors are getting anxious, and we can't afford to lose their support." "I understand," Ethan replied, frustration creeping into his tone. "But can't this wait? I'm working through some personal matters right now." "Personal matters?" "This is business, Ethan. You need to prioritize." Ethan bit back a retort, his mind racing. He didn't want to slip back into the persona of the ruthless businessman he had become. With a sigh, he ended the call and turned back to Sarah, who was waiting patiently, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Sorry about that," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "It seems I have some pressing matters to attend to." "Is everything all right?" she asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "Just the usual business troubles," he replied, brushing it off. "But let's not dwell on that. I was about to share something important with you, something I've kept hidden for far too long." Her eyes sparkled with anticipation, and he could feel the weight of his secret hovering in the air between them. He wanted to tell her everything, to share the truth that had plagued him for years. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, his phone buzzed again, this time a relentless series of notifications that demanded his attention. Ethan cursed under his breath, feeling the moment slipping away. "I really need to." "Go ahead," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I understand. We can talk later." He hesitated, torn between the urgency of his business and the desire to connect with her on a deeper level. "No, Sarah, I want to do this now. You deserve to know." But the call of duty was insistent, and he felt the pressure mounting. "I'll be right back," he promised, turning away once more. As he walked back towards the house, the weight of his secret felt heavier than ever. He had just begun to open up, to share the burdens that had shaped his life, only to be interrupted by the very world he sought to escape. He glanced back at Sarah, who remained in the garden, her expression contemplative yet patient. He knew that their conversation was far from over, and as he stepped inside, he resolved to return to her, to finally reveal the truth that had haunted him for so long. Ethan stood in his expansive garden, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the meticulously manicured lawns. He could hear the faint rustling of leaves as a gentle breeze swept through, but his mind was elsewhere, plagued by the secret he had held close for far too long. It was time. He had felt an undeniable connection with Sarah, and perhaps she was the only person who could understand the gravity of his burden. "Sarah," he called, his voice steady, yet tinged with an urgency that made her turn to him with wide eyes. She had been tending to the flowers, her hands dirted with rich soil, but the moment he summoned her, she wiped them on her apron and approached with a look of concern etched across her features. "Is everything all right, Mr. Caldwell?" she asked, her voice soft yet inquisitive. There was an inherent warmth in her tone that made Ethan's heart ache with a mix of fear and longing. "Please call me Ethan. We've known each other long enough for that," he replied, a hint of a smile breaking through his somber demeanor. "I have something important to share with you, something I should have said a long time ago." She nodded, sensing the weight of the moment. "What is it?" Ethan took a deep breath, the air heavy with the scent of blooming roses. I'm not well, Sarah. I have a terminal illness." The words hung between them like a thick fog, and for a moment, all the vibrant colors of the garden faded into a dull blur. Shock coursed through Sarah, her eyes widening as she processed his revelation. "Terminal?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But how long have you known?" "Months," he admitted, guilt flooding his chest. "I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want to be a burden. But you deserve to know the truth." Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes, but instead of pity, there was a flicker of admiration. "Ethan, that must be incredibly hard for you. But I admire your strength. You carry this alone, but you don't have to. You have people who care about you." He blinked at her unexpected response, taken aback by her resilience. "You don't feel sorry for me?" he asked, almost incredulously. "No," she replied, her voice firm. "You've built an empire, faced countless challenges, and now you're facing this. That takes courage. You should know that you're not alone in this fight." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, an unfamiliar flicker of hope igniting in the depths of his soul. "I've never shared this with anyone. I thought I'd face it alone, but now," his voice trailed off, the vulnerability between them creating an unbreakable bond. "Now you have me," she said softly, stepping closer. "We can face this together, whatever it may mean." For the first time in months, Ethan felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had been so caught up in his own turmoil, he had forgotten the power of connection. The walls he had built around himself began to crumble, brick by brick, as he allowed Sarah in, just a little more. "Thank you, Sarah," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I didn't expect this reaction. I thought you would pity me." "Pity isn't what you need," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "You need someone to stand by your side, to remind you that you're still here, still fighting. Your life matters, Ethan. Even now." Ethan swallowed hard, moved by her words. "You have no idea how much that means to me." They stood in silence, the weight of the moment settling between them. Then, as if sensing the gravity of their shared vulnerability, Sarah broke the stillness. "How do you feel about all this?" Ethan paused, reflecting on her question. "I'm scared. I'm scared of what's to come and what I'll leave behind. The thought of not being there for my family, for my business, it terrifies me." "Have you thought about what you want to do with the time you have left?" she asked gently. "I want to make things right," he confessed, the honesty spilling from his lips like a long-held secret. "I want to leave a legacy, something more than just wealth. I want to help people, to make a difference." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling at his words. "You already are, Ethan. Just by being here, by sharing your truth. You've changed my life in ways I can't even describe." Ethan's eyes softened, a flicker of gratitude lighting up his features. I didn't realize how lonely I was until you came into my life. You bring a light that I didn't know I needed. Then let's embrace that light together," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We can find a way to help each other." As they spoke, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the garden. Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of connection to Sarah, an understanding that transcended their roles as employer and employee. It was something deeper, a friendship forged in the fires of vulnerability and strength. Eventually, as twilight began to blanket the garden in soft shadows, they parted ways, but not without a lingering sense of hope. Ethan watched Sarah walk back to the mansion, her silhouette framed by the fading light. He felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted and a new chapter had begun. Meanwhile, Sarah found herself contemplating the future. The revelation of Ethan's illness weighed heavily on her mind, but instead of despair, it ignited a fire within her. She could no longer simply exist. She had to fight for her child's future, to create a life filled with love and purpose. As she stepped inside her small apartment that evening, the familiar clutter of her surroundings greeted her. Yet, tonight felt different. There was a spark of determination in her heart. Ethan's strength had inspired her, and she would channel that energy into providing for her baby. She had a purpose now, and it was intertwined with Ethan's journey. In doing so, she would redefine her own life. Their lives were now connected by a thread of resilience, and she would not let it fray. As the stars began to twinkle outside her window, Sarah felt a sense of calm wash over her. The future was uncertain, but she would embrace it with open arms, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And for the first time in a long time, both Ethan and Sarah found themselves filled with a flicker of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, light could still break through. The days following Ethan's revelation weighed heavily on both him and Sarah. The sun rose and fell, but the shadows of uncertainty lingered in the Caldwell mansion, a place that had once felt like a fortress of solitude. Now, it was a complex web of emotions, fears, and hopes. Ethan spent his mornings in the expansive study, staring at the walls adorned with accolades that spoke of his success, but did little to comfort his dwindling spirit. He had always been a man of action, but now he felt like a ghost, haunting the remnants of his own legacy. Meanwhile, Sarah busied herself with preparations for her baby, balancing her duties as a housekeeper with the anticipation of impending motherhood. She navigated the vast halls of the mansion, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. Each room held memories, her laughter with Ethan, their shared secrets, but they were now tinged with the weight of his illness. She had begun to notice the subtle changes in him, the slight pallor of his skin, the way he leaned against the doorframe for support, the times when he would pause mid-sentence, lost in thought. One afternoon, as Sarah watered the blooming roses in the garden, she felt a sudden pang of nostalgia. The vibrant colors reminded her of the dreams she had once held for her life, a cozy home, a loving partner, and a bright future for her child. But now, all those dreams felt clouded by the harsh reality of her father's imprisonment. She wiped a tear from her cheek, the weight of it all crashing down like a summer storm. Just then, she heard footsteps behind her. "Sarah," Ethan's voice broke through the stillness. She turned to find him standing at the edge of the garden, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," she replied quickly, forcing a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just thinking about life." Ethan stepped closer, his gaze searching. "You don't look like you're just thinking. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." He paused, glancing at the flowers she tended. "The roses are beautiful, by the way." "Thank you," she said softly, appreciating the compliment despite her inner turmoil. "They remind me of hope, something I'm desperately trying to hold on to." "Hope is important," he said, his voice tinged with an understanding that surprised her. "But it's okay to let it out, too. What's really going on?" Sarah hesitated, caught between the urge to confide in him and the fear of burdening him further. But the sincerity in his eyes urged her to speak. "My father. He's innocent, Ethan. He didn't commit the crime they locked him away for, but no one believes me. I don't know how to prove it." Ethan's expression shifted from concern to determination. "Tell me what happened." Taking a deep breath, Sarah recounted the events leading to her father's arrest. He was framed by someone who wanted to take his business. My father is a good man, Ethan. He worked hard his entire life. I can't stand the thought of him wasting away in prison for something he didn't do. Ethan listened intently, his heart aching for her. What if we could find a way to help him? I have resources, connections I could tap into. We could investigate this. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You would do that for me? After everything you're going through? Of course, he replied, his voice steady. Your father deserves justice, and you deserve to have your family back. We'll figure this out together. As he spoke, a swell of hope broke through Sarah's despair. Thank you, Ethan. You don't know what this means to me. We'll start by gathering information. I'll use my contacts to see what we can find, he said, his tone resolute. But first, you need to tell me everything about the case. Every detail matters. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the garden, they sat together on a stone bench, surrounded by the fragrant blooms. Sarah shared her father's story, the events leading to his arrest, and the names of people she suspected were involved in framing him. Ethan scribbled notes, his brow furrowed in concentration. Your father's business, what was it? He asked, glancing up from his notepad. He owned a small construction company. He built homes and helped people in our community, Sarah explained. But there were always competitors who wanted to see him fail. I just never thought it would go this far. Ethan nodded, processing the information. Corruption runs deep in business. I've seen it firsthand, but we'll expose it. We'll get to the bottom of this. The conversation flowed easily from one topic to another, and with each shared word, their connection deepened. Ethan felt a sense of purpose rekindle within him, a feeling he thought had long since vanished. He was no longer just a man facing his own mortality. He was a man who could make a difference, even if it was in someone else's life. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, casting a soft glow over the garden, Sarah felt the warmth of their bond. You're not just helping me, Ethan. You're giving me hope when I thought I had none left. He looked at her, a soft smile on his lips. That's what friends are for, right? Friends. The word lingered in the air between them, heavy with unspoken feelings. Sarah felt a flutter in her chest, a warmth that was both comforting and frightening. Could they really be friends, given the complexities of their lives? Before she could voice her thoughts, Ethan stood up, the moment of vulnerability fleeting. Let's get started on this. Tomorrow, I'll make some calls, and we'll begin our search for the truth. Thank you, she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. They lingered in the garden for a moment longer before heading inside, a newfound purpose guiding their steps. Days turned into weeks, and their partnership began to flourish. Ethan immersed himself in the investigation, utilizing his resources and connections to dig deeper into the murky waters of deceit surrounding Sarah's father's case. They spent long hours poring over documents, interviewing witnesses, and piecing together a timeline that would hopefully exonerate him. One evening, as they sat in Ethan's study, surrounded by stacks of papers and empty coffee mugs, Sarah looked up from her notes. Ethan, I can't thank you enough for this. You're doing so much for me, and I don't want to take advantage of your kindness. He met her gaze, his expression earnest. You're not taking advantage of anything. Helping you is giving me purpose. We're in this together, remember? Together. The word resonated in her heart, a promise that felt both comforting and exhilarating. As they continued their work, Ethan's health began to fluctuate unpredictably. He would have good days when he was full of energy and determination, and then there were days when he seemed to wane, his strength sapped by the illness he fought to keep hidden. Sarah noticed the changes, the way he would occasionally pause, his hand pressed against his side, as if bracing against an invisible pain. Ethan, maybe you should take a break, she suggested one afternoon, concern etched on her face. You don't have to do this all at once. I'm fine, Sarah, he replied, but the slight tremor in his voice contradicted his words. We're so close to uncovering the truth. I can't stop now. But your health? Don't worry about me, he interrupted, his tone sharper than intended. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken fears. He softened, realizing how his words may have hurt her. I can't let you down. She studied him closely, feeling a mix of worry and admiration. You won't let me down, but you need to take care of yourself, too. You're just as important to this as I am. Ethan sighed, the tension between them palpable. "I promise I'll rest. Just let me finish this last round of calls." As the sun set behind the mansion, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the two of them continued their work, each lost in their thoughts. Sarah felt a surge of determination. Together, they were not just uncovering the truth. They were forging a bond that transcended their individual struggles. They were allies in a battle against injustice, and in this shared mission, they found solace and strength in each other. Little did they know the depths of the darkness that lay ahead, waiting to test their resolve and the fragile connection they had built. The truth was a double-edged sword, and as they delved deeper, they would soon realize just how perilous their journey had become. As the days stretched into a blur of uncertainty, Ethan Caldwell felt the weight of his illness pressing heavier on his chest. Each morning, the mirror reflected a man who was slowly fading, his once vibrant complexion now replaced by a pallor that spoke of sleepless nights and worry. Yet amidst the shadows of his own despair, there flickered a determination to help Sarah Mitchell, the devoted housekeeper whose strength and resilience had become a source of unexpected inspiration for him. Ethan had always been a man of action, driven by a need to succeed, to conquer every challenge that came his way. But now, as he sat in his grand office overlooking the city, he found himself grappling with a different kind of battle, one that involved not just his own fate, but the future of Sarah's family. He recalled the tears he had seen in her eyes when she had confided about her father. The injustice of it all gnawed at him, pushing him to work harder, even as his body betrayed him. "Ethan?" Sarah's voice broke through his thoughts as she entered his office, her figure framed by the sunlight streaming through the large windows. She carried a stack of documents, her brow furrowed with concentration. "I found some information on your father's case. I thought you want to look at it." "Thank you, Sarah," he replied, trying to mask the weariness in his tone. "But I need you to promise me something." "Of course." "What is it?" she said, her eyes widening with concern. Ethan hesitated, the weight of his secret pressing against his resolve. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from the reality of his condition. "I need you to focus on your father's case. I can't afford to become a distraction to you." Her expression softened, and she stepped closer, placing the documents on his desk. "Ethan, you're not a distraction. You're the only one who believes I can help my dad. I can't do this without you." He looked into her eyes, searching for the strength that had drawn him to her in the first place. "I just don't want to drag you down with me." She shook her head, determination flashing in her gaze. "You're not dragging me down. We're in this together. I won't let you go through this alone." Ethan felt a swell of emotion rise within him. In that moment, he realized how much Sarah had come to mean to him. She was more than just a housekeeper. She had become his confidant, his partner in this fight against injustice. And despite his own battle, he wanted to be there for her, to help her reclaim her father's life. As they pored over the documents, an unexpected sense of urgency filled the room. Sarah's fingers traced the lines of a report, her brow furrowing as she concentrated. "Ethan, look at this," she said, her voice sharp with excitement. "This witness statement contradicts the police report from the night of the incident. If we can track this person down, it could change everything." Ethan's heart raced. "Do you think they'll talk to us?" "We have to try," she said, her resolve unwavering. "Every minute counts." As they formulated a plan, Ethan felt a flicker of hope light within him. They were making progress, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps they could clear Sarah's father's name. But as they prepared to leave for the next step in their investigation, a shadow passed over Ethan's face, a reminder of the danger that loomed over them. "Sarah," he said, his voice serious, "we need to be careful. There are people involved in this case who won't want the truth to come out." She nodded, her expression shifting to one of determination. "I understand, but I'm not backing down. We have to fight for what's right." As they stepped outside, the crisp air invigorated them, but Ethan felt the chill of reality settle in his bones. He was running out of time, and he needed to ensure that Sarah was safe. They drove in silence, their minds racing with possibilities and plans, but Ethan could sense the tension building. The closer they got to uncovering the truth, the more perilous their mission became. Later that evening, they found themselves in a dimly lit diner, the kind of place where secrets were whispered over greasy plates of food. They sat in a booth in the corner, their voices low as they discussed their findings. Sarah's enthusiasm was contagious, but Ethan's thoughts were muddied with anxiety. "Ethan, I think we're on the verge of something big," she said, her eyes sparkling. "If we can get the name of that witness, we can build a case." He watched her, admiring her spirit. "You're incredible, you know that?" She blushed slightly, pushing a stray hair behind her ear. "I'm just doing what needs to be done." But Ethan knew it was more than that. Her tenacity was a lifeline for him, pulling him away from the depths of despair he often found himself in. "You're fighting for your family, and that's admirable." The waitress approached, interrupting their moment. "What can I get you two?" she asked with a friendly smile. "Just coffee for now, please," Sarah replied, her focus still on their conversation. As the waitress walked away, Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I want you to promise me something, Sarah." "Anything," she said, her eyes meeting his. "If things get dangerous, I need you to walk away. Don't put yourself in harm's way for me or for this case." Her expression hardened. "Ethan, you can't ask me that. I won't run away when there's a chance to help my dad. It's not just about your dad anymore. It's about you and your future," he insisted, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "And what about you? What about your future?" she replied, her voice tinged with emotion. "You're fighting for your life, too, and I won't let you face this alone." Ethan's heart clenched. He wanted to protect her, to shield her from whatever darkness awaited them, but he also knew she wouldn't back down. "You're right. Before he could finish, his phone buzzed on the table. The caller ID sent a jolt of fear through him. It was his business partner. He hesitated, glancing at Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. "Answer it," she urged. With a deep breath, Ethan accepted the call. "What is it?" he said tersely. "Ethan, we need to talk. It's urgent." His partner's voice crackled through the line. "I'm busy," Ethan replied, casting a glance at Sarah, who was watching him intently. "Busy with what? That housekeeper of yours? This isn't a game, Caldwell. You're playing with fire." Ethan felt a surge of anger, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm handling my business, just like always. Just remember, you're not as untouchable as you think," his partner warned before abruptly disconnecting the call. The silence between Ethan and Sarah felt heavy, the tension thickening the air. "What was that about?" she asked, concern etching her features. "Just business," he replied evasively, not wanting to burden her with the implications of the conversation. But Sarah wasn't easily deterred. "Ethan, you can't keep things from me. If there's danger, I need to know." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's complicated. Let's just focus on your father's case for now." But even as he said the words, he knew the stakes were rising. They were treading on dangerous ground, and the closer they got to the truth, the more perilous their path became. As they left the diner, a sense of dread settled over him, intertwining with the flicker of hope that had ignited in their shared mission. That night, as Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, he felt the weight of his illness pressing down on him. He had promised Sarah he would fight for her father, but the truth was, he was fighting for her, too. In this battle against injustice, he had found a purpose that transcended his own suffering. And despite the shadows that loomed, he was determined to face whatever came next, together with Sarah Mitchell. Ethan Caldwell and Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the dimly lit conference room, the air thick with tension as they prepared to confront the corrupt officials who had wronged Sarah's family. The walls echoed with the remnants of whispered deals and hidden agendas, and Ethan could feel the weight of his deteriorating health pressing down on him like a shroud. But it was not just his illness that weighed heavily on his mind. It was the responsibility he felt to help Sarah, the woman who had become an unexpected beacon of hope in his otherwise dark existence. "Are you ready for this?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse but determined. He leaned against the table, trying to mask the tremor in his hands. Sarah, standing beside him, her expression fierce and resolute, nodded with conviction. "We have to be," she replied, her eyes bright with a mixture of anxiety and determination. "If they think they can get away with this, they're wrong. We have the evidence, and they can't silence us now." Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. They had gathered crucial evidence, Sarah's secret recording of the officials discussing the framing of her father. The knowledge that they had the upper hand filled him with a sense of urgency, yet the reality of his condition loomed large. He had little time left, and each moment was precious, not just for him but for Sarah and her unborn child. As they entered the adjoining room, the atmosphere shifted. The officials. They were a group of men in tailored suits, their faces etched with arrogance and disdain, looked up from their discussion, surprise flickering across their features. The room was filled with the scent of expensive cologne and the soft hum of a projector displaying a presentation. The momentary pause in their chatter was palpable, a brief acknowledgement of the intrusion. "What's the meaning of this?" one of the officials barked, his voice laced with condescension. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan stepped forward, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. "We need to talk about the case of Sarah Mitchell's father," he stated firmly, his gaze unwavering. "We know the truth about the corruption that led to his wrongful conviction." The room erupted into laughter, a mocking sound that echoed off the walls. "You think you can intimidate us with wild accusations?" Another official sneered, crossing his arms. "You're out of your league, Caldwell." But Sarah, emboldened by the support Ethan had given her, took a step forward, her voice cutting through the laughter. "You don't get to laugh at this. You destroyed my family's life for your gain. You thought we wouldn't fight back, but you were wrong." Her voice trembled with emotion, but there was a steely strength behind her words. Ethan felt a swell of pride for Sarah. She had transformed from a timid housekeeper into a fierce advocate for justice. "We recorded your conversation," he added, pulling out a small device from his pocket. "We have everything you said about framing her father. This is going to the authorities." The laughter ceased, replaced by a charged silence. The officials exchanged wary glances, their bravado faltering as they realized the gravity of the situation. "You think you can just waltz in here and threaten us?" One of them spat, but Ethan could see the fear creeping into his eyes. "Not a threat," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the tremors of weakness that threatened to overtake him. "A promise. We will expose you for what you are." He glanced at Sarah, who nodded, her resolve unshaken. Together, they were a force to be reckoned with. It was in that moment, just as the tension reached its peak, that Sarah pressed the play button on her recording device. The room filled with the muffled voices of the officials discussing their plans that had led to her father's imprisonment. The words hung in the air, a damning testament to their corruption, and Ethan watched as the color drained from the faces of the men before them. The door swung open, and a group of law enforcement officers stormed in, alerted by Sarah's discreet call before they entered the room. "Hands in the air! You're under arrest for conspiracy and corruption," one of the officers shouted, his voice booming with authority. Ethan's heart raced, a mixture of relief and exhilaration washing over him as the officials were taken into custody. Sarah stood beside him, tears glistening in her eyes but a smile breaking through. They had done it. They had fought back and won. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Ethan, despite his exhaustion, felt a surge of strength at her gratitude. "This means everything to me. You believed in me when no one else did." Ethan offered a faint smile, the corners of his lips lifting with warmth. "You're stronger than you know, Sarah. You deserve this victory." He could feel the weight of his own impending fate pressing down, but in that moment, he felt a flicker of purpose ignite within him. He had not only fought for Sarah's family, but had found a reason to keep pushing forward in his own battle against his illness. As the officers led the corrupt officials away, Ethan turned to Sarah, who was staring at the scene with a mix of disbelief and triumph. "What will you do now?" he asked gently. "I'm going to fight for my father's exoneration," she replied, her voice steady. "And I'll make sure he knows the truth. I owe him that much." Ethan nodded, and for a moment, they shared a silence that was rich with understanding. The world around them had changed, and so had they. With the oppressive weight of secrecy lifted, they stood together, ready to face whatever came next. Later that evening, as they sat in the garden of the Caldwell mansion beneath the soft glow of the moonlight, Ethan reflected on the journey they had taken. "I never thought I could find purpose again," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You've given me that." Sarah looked at him, her expression softening. "You've given me so much more than that. You've shown me that there's still hope, even when things seem impossible. As they sat in silence, the stars twinkling above, Ethan felt a surge of emotion sweep over him. Moments like these, filled with genuine connection and shared struggles, reminded him of the beauty of life, even amidst the chaos. In an unexpected twist of fate, the truth emerged. Days later, after the arrest of the corrupt officials, it was revealed that Sarah's father had been framed by none other than Ethan's former business partner, who had sought to eliminate competition at any cost. The betrayal cut deep, but it also provided a sense of closure. Ethan had a chance to redeem himself, to right the wrongs of his past. With the truth exposed, Ethan found himself not just as a man facing an uncertain future, but as a catalyst for change, a man who had rekindled hope in a world shrouded in darkness. Sarah, empowered by her newfound strength and purpose, was ready to raise her child with hope for the future, her heart filled with the possibility of a new beginning. As the sun set on the horizon, Ethan and Sarah stood together, united in their resolve to forge ahead. They had faced the storm, and together, they had emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever life had in store.